think Israel's finished its so-called second phase in Gaza, and it's moving towards, quote unquote, I'm quoting the defense officials and the prime minister himself, a more surgical phase. They've withdrawn very large number of troops from Gaza semi-permanently. So as opposed to sort of giving them a 2-3 day break, they have told them that they can stay at home until further notice. That's a huge shift, and this has happened in the last 2 weeks and continuing to happen. There are more and more soldiers coming out.
Look, I mean, it's very interesting, isn't it? Because you've got Netanyahu who's saying absolutely no to a two-state solution. And then you have, senior statespeople from around the world. We just heard from Grant Shapps going, well, hang on a minute, that's the solution we want. Now, the whole world might want that solution. But if Netanyahu doesn't want it, then it's really difficult, isn't it?
Well, I think Netanyahu isn't going to be prime minister for very long, and I think we need to think about it in that through that lens. Netanyahu has been a dreadful prime minister, I think the worst prime minister in Israel's history, and his interest is in prolonging the war and keeping his very extreme right-wing cabinet intact, his coalition partners, who are even more extreme than him, and they are genuinely opposed to a Palestinian state. In Netanyahu's case himself, it's hard to tell because he speaks with both sides of his mouth. And yesterday he said to President Joe Biden that he is not ruling out a two states. So it's very, very difficult to decipher what he is or isn't able to do. But what we do know is that he is prone to pressure. But the main pressure at the moment is to oust him from power and hold elections and have a more moderate, reasonable government that hopefully will accommodate the two-state solution, given that you correctly said, and Grant Shapps, the defense secretary, correctly said it is the only solution on the table at the moment.
And there's, there's a lot of, pushback against Netanyahu. We'll come on to what's actually happening in Israel, but lots of political figures here. I mean, I interviewed Sadiq Khan yesterday at an event yesterday morning in the City of London, and he actually labelled Netanyahu a roadblock to peace. Do you think that's how more and more Israeli citizens see Benjamin Netanyahu?
Well, I think it's not just a roadblock to peace. I think he's blocking the state of Israel from functioning. He's prolonging the war. He tried to destroy the democracy. He tried to have a judicial coup, a judicial overhaul that will undermine the powers of the Supreme Court and therefore not render the state democratic. But very, very fortunately, in the last few weeks, the Supreme Court had ruled that the basic laws, which basically are the equivalent of a constitution, that his government passed were illegal, and therefore, so his attempts to destroy the Israeli democracy on that front have failed, and he's under mounting pressure to step down. Now, he's not going to step down voluntarily, so the big question is how and when are the Israeli people going to get rid of him?
And how do you think that is going to happen? Of course, we saw protests yesterday in Tel Aviv, Jerusalem, over the country. Real sort of anger about the hostages, demanding him to step down. I saw a placard that read in Jerusalem, "Mothers cry, we will not sacrifice our children in the war to save the right wing." So clearly there's a huge amount of anger bubbling up. But what are the mechanisms available? How can he go?
I think the protests are going to mount now. I think Israel's finished its so-called second phase in Gaza, and it's moving towards, quote unquote, I'm quoting the defense officials and the prime minister himself, a more surgical phase. They've withdrawn very large number of troops from Gaza semi-permanently. So as opposed to sort of giving them a 2-3 day break, they have told them that they can stay at home until further notice. That's a huge shift, and this has happened in the last 2 weeks and continuing to happen. There are more and more soldiers coming out. There will be the resumption of massive protests. So you could get well over 1 million people protesting and blocking the streets. The protests are calling directly for Netanyahu to step down. It's not a protest just about ending the war. You have a number of protests. You have protests for the release of the hostages. You have process to end the war, and you have a process specifically just for Netanyahu to step down, and those are mounting. You also may get some of the ministers threatening to leave. So the mechanisms would be, he's got a 64 majority in the Knesset of 120. So four members of the Knesset of the coalition need to step down. Many of us have been waiting for this to happen for a very, very long time. I can't tell you, I don't have a crystal ball whether it's going to happen today or tomorrow, or whether that is the mechanism by which he will step down. There was also a chance that members of the right will step down. So if he does say to Joe Biden, or if he has come under pressure from them that, oh, he's not ruling out 2 states, then they may step down, because they are far more extreme than him, and they're the ones that want to settle Gaza. And so he's coming, he's sort of being cornered both by the opposition and by his own extreme coalition. And it's just only a question of time before elections will be called, or before 4 members step down. It's one or the other. Those are the mechanisms. The protests will force elections, and the protests may also persuade a number of members of his own party, the Likud party, which is the most quote-unquote moderate party in this very extreme coalition, to defect. Other parties are setting up now. They're all holding primaries. I mean, one is in pre-election mood already. So it's only a question of time.